I'm very grateful indeed for this privilege of worshiping here with you again in this marvelous chapel, and especially grateful to be associated in the service today with Reverend Nancy Foray Clark and Mr. Gallagher, along with the choir and this wonderful organist and Dr. Hickman and all of the soloists who render such beautiful music for us. This is a high moment, and I do not take it for granted. The honor of proclaiming the gospel of the Son of God here is a very high one indeed. In fact, I have enjoyed my few months at Duke immensely, and especially have I enjoyed my relationship with Dean Campbell in the Divinity School and Dr. Williman over here and Bill Turner, my colleague in the Divinity School. As a matter of fact, when I keep getting lost on these various Chapel Hill roads and streets and boulevards and so forth in Durham, I wonder if this would not be a good time to propose that we change the names of some of these and recognize the service of some of our colleagues. It looks now like the only reason for being in Durham is to find your way to Chapel Hill. And during this basketball season may be the best time to suggest a change. I thought it might be a very good thing to leave Chapel Hill Boulevard like it is and then change Chapel Hill Road to Turner Avenue and Chapel Hill Street to Campbell Street, and then Old Chapel Hill Road to Williman Road. When he comes back, you tell him that I've made that proposal to the city fathers and mothers. Now, it's very hard to make a Methodist out of an old Baptist. I'm Baptist born and Baptist bred, and when I'm gone, it'll be a Baptist dead. But the problem is that this chapel staff is so efficient. You know, they write to you 9 months ahead of time and ask you for a subject, 9 months hence. And that's because they are following the lectionary that the Methodists follow, and they know what ought to be preached about on that Sunday. It doesn't bother them at all. But we Baptists are accustomed to more spontaneity than that. In fact, that's the trademark of our religion, spontaneity. And when I looked and saw what I had promised to preach about, I struggled terribly to deal with that subject, but it seemed more and more like one I had done for Christmas. So I beg now to change the subject, because when I was reading for Lent, I ran across the name of Joanna, and I could not get her off my mind. In the 8th chapter of Luke, we have a reference to Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward. And then way over on Easter Sunday morning, we find these women coming to the sepulchre to anoint the body of Jesus, Mary Magdalene and several others. And then in that list there was Joanna again. There's nothing in between. And ever since I saw this, I have been trying to think of the life of Joanna, this hidden disciple, and how she must have made a great sacrifice to do what it was that she had to do. Now let's get acquainted with Joanna, this hidden disciple, and how she did what she had to do. Every few months or so, we find another popular expression being used, an expression that somehow everyone seems to understand. My wife and I have to keep up with these because we have 4 sons, and there are 13 years between son number 2 and son number 3, so we've had deja vu. We've just been raising boys for an entire lifetime, and God moves in very mysterious ways. But it does mean that we've had to keep up with these colloquialisms. It's amazing how these sayings get started. A little while ago, they started using the word chill. Chill. So what does that mean, chill? Well, it means super cool, Daddy. It means it is highly approved. Chill. Then I kept seeing these bumper stickers, just do it. I kept trying to figure out what was that referring to, and I couldn't find out, but all I know is that it sounds reckless to me. It sounds like paying no attention to consequences and ignoring penalties. Just do it. So I don't like the sound of that one, and I have dropped that one quickly. But there's another expression in vogue now that is our subject today in connection with Joanna, the hidden disciple. And this expression calls us to face up to whatever it is that stands in our way. It says, just do what you've got to do. And it covers a wide range of situations. It means if you have to stay up late at night finishing an assignment, just do what you've got to do. If it means breaking a habit that's killing you slowly, just do what you've got to do. Giving up some food that is against your health, or cutting off a friendship that is just too negative, do what you've got to do. If it means tearing up a credit card, then do what you've got to do. Getting up earlier for work, taking an extra job to meet your budget's demands, spending a weekend in hibernation to finish a term paper. This came to me as I thought of Joanna. And I thought of it during Lent and the task of discipleship in our time. And this is a very inspiring personality we find hidden here in the Gospel of Luke. We find her first in Luke, the 8th chapter, verse 3. And she really faced a tough situation. She went on and did what she had to do. Much of what we know about Joanna, we have to piece together from these tiny fragments that we find in the Gospels, and this is what we find. Joanna was married to a big man, a man named Chusa, who was the chief steward in Herod's palace. Herod was the king who ruled over Jesus' people, a puppet king, not popular at all. And he served under the Roman emperor, a kind of a convenient politician. And Joanna was married to Chusa, Herod's chief steward, the one in charge of the palace. Somehow Joanna heard about Jesus, and evidently she had some kind of an ailment that caused her to go to look for Jesus. And when she found him, she was among several people who were healed by Jesus. We are not told what her ailment was, but whatever it was, she was relieved of it. And there began her relationship with the Master. And in her gratitude to Jesus for her new life that she had found, she made a decision to follow him. And she had to go and tell her husband, Chusa, in Herod's palace that she was going to follow Jesus. Some people, it appears, are really prepared to be serious about their discipleship. And Joanna became one of a small group of women whom Jesus had befriended and had healed, and women who saw to it that Jesus and his disciples had food and water and shelter and safe places to rest. The Bible says that they ministered unto the disciples out of their substance. As we remember what the position of a woman was in the Roman social hierarchy of the first century, it took an awful lot for Joanna to go and tell her husband, who worked for the king, that she had found a new life for herself. And anyone who knows how the Roman powers looked down on the Jews in Jesus' day would know that it took some nerve for Joanna to tell her husband that she felt that she had to leave, to make an adjustment, to depart from the palace circle and follow the Master. And yet this is just what she did. Read Luke 8, verses 2 and 3. And certain women which had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom went 7 devils, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, and Susanna and many others, which ministered unto him of their substance. Can you imagine Herod's top steward having a wife who would be a follower of Jesus of Galilee? But Joanna did what she had to do. And if you have discovered that Jesus has become the new center of your life, you may feel what Joanna felt and feel that you have to do now whatever it is you have to do to live up to your discipleship. And the Lenten season is the time for this self-examination. This must have been a serious problem for everyone involved. Herod did not want to hear anything about a Jesus follower that close to him in his palace. Chuza was his servant, the chief servant. And you know that Chuza did not want to have to tell Herod that his wife had decided that she had a new life following this Galilean. Herod was a servant of the emperor, and the emperor regarded Jesus as a public nuisance. None of this was working out. Joanna had a problem herself, caring about her husband, changing her status, and all of that. And then finding out that it was more important for her to follow Jesus than to do anything else in the social group around the palace. So Joanna did what Joanna had to do. And as I think of how our own relationship to Christ is always under examination, and especially in this Lenten season, I'm helped greatly by studying the life of Joanna, even from these fragments, because so much is implied with these brief references to her. Some of the questions that arise are, for example, what was it that made her take such a risk as this? And what made her stay with her choice to the very end? Because you see, Joanna did not start out and then quit. 3 years later, at the sepulcher, they tell us about these women who came with spices and ointments to anoint the body of Jesus. And when they called off the list of those who came, the first ones at the tomb, the ones who made the first announcement that he was not there, among that group was Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, a hidden disciple of Jesus. Well, I have an idea what brings this on from my own experience and from the experience of other Christians that I have known. In Jesus, she found a new priority for her life, something to put first in her life, and she had not found that in that temple crowd, in that palace crowd. When she met Jesus, she compared him, no doubt, with the crowd that she had seen in that circle around Herod, and she chose Jesus. Her husband was in charge of Herod's palace. He hired all of the help, ordered the repairs, bought the food, arranged the banquets, controlled the traffic in and out. And this type of a job attracts a certain kind of a following. The political opportunists like people like Chuza, the influence peddlers, the hustlers, those who like to turn deals and like to claim to be insiders. Generally, these are people with flabby consciences and who do not think of anything but their own advancement. These are the people that she might have seen around Herod's palace. And then when Joanna met somebody else like Jesus, a person of stature and moral substance, she found another kind of a human being altogether, one who focused on a life of integrity. If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. A life that is giving. He who would seek to save his own life will lose it. He who loses his life for my sake shall find it. A life in tune with God. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. Another kind of a person altogether. We don't meet but one or two of these kinds of persons in a whole lifetime. persons who cause us to reshuffle our priorities and say, these things I've been paying close attention to do not matter at all. And the things I put way down the end of the list are the most important things after all. She noticed how Jesus had compassion for those who were hurt and lonely, and how he could have a vicarious approach to their lives and stand where they stood and see the world through their eyes. She noticed all of that. She noticed how Jesus could rise above tribe and race and clan and gender and put aside trivial notions of class and rank. She noticed how he had no difficulty at all including her, the wife of Cusa, in his circle, top aide to the king. So she put Jesus at the top and put the palace gang at the bottom. And when she made the comparison, it caused her to look at her own life, and she began to shuffle her priorities. She decided to give up on some of those activities that the palace people had called important and go out and join those who were helping the master. There was a committee out there with Mary Magdalene in charge, and these women became the backup crew for the master. He lived a normal life and needed help. He needed food. He needed laundry done. He needed some place to rest and meet with his disciples, and no doubt they were helpful to him. And Joanna put down the high society crowd around Herod's palace and put something else in its place, helping the master with his teaching and preaching and healing ministry. And all of us need to review our priorities every now and then. Just the other day, I had a priority question. I was up early. I had a reading project. I had a paper that was due to a publisher, and the deadline was fast approaching. I didn't want to be embarrassed, and I didn't want to stay up all night. But my wife told me that one of our friends had passed away, and that she had attended the funeral, and that she learned that the pastor of the church would be out of town and could not go to the interment at the cemetery. And I said, oh, that's terrible that she may be buried without a song, without a prayer, without a scripture lesson. Imagine 45 years in a church, 82 years old, then you die and a grave digger eases you into your grave unceremoniously. I put down my paper. Do you know, I had no trouble at all. Like a computer, my priorities began to shuffle around. And something said, Sam, stay up all night tonight and do your paper, but put on your black shoes and your dark suit and get that striped tie on and get out of here and go to that cemetery and be standing there in the ice and the mud and the snow. Wait for that procession no matter how long it takes to get there. And you guarantee to God that this child will not be put away like that. Now, you know it didn't make a lot of difference with the Almighty what I mumbled over her when she was being buried. That's not the point. The point was what was going on inside of me. Once again, I had some real contact with the notion that the mind of Christ, when it's with you, will guide you every day in the smallest corners of your existence. That's what Joanna found out. She had no trouble at all putting her priorities in a new listing. See, some people have great difficulty with this. Somebody thought it was a priority to break the leg of an Olympic skater to knock her out of competition. Now, you know those priorities were way out of line. How can you break the leg of an Olympic skater, world-renowned, without getting caught? Someone thought it was a priority to kill dozens of Muslims at prayer in their mosque in Hebron. What a ghastly thing to do. Some thought it was a priority to blow up the Trade Center, no matter who's in there, children, physicians, nurses, whoever, paraplegics, it didn't matter, blow it up. In the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, some people thought it was a priority to make money kidnapping slaves and selling them as animals. denying them education and branding them as inferior beings and making it all come out even. Some people have a strange way of establishing priorities and trying to get away with it. But what Joanna found out was that her loyalty to Christ caused her to reorder her priorities. And then more than that, she did not start out and then stop. Many people find these religious fads to be enticing, and some of them change religions every time you turn around, like changing hairstyles, you know. You look on the television and see somebody else who looks alluring, and there goes their religion. They're gone again. And they're always writing a letter to the pastor. I've decided to change my faith again. Joanna went out and found Jesus, and she stayed with it. She found a new purpose for her life. It is not just a fad. In Luke 8, we find her with these women starting out, but in Luke 24, she's still there. Still there. After the arrest in Gethsemane, after the mock trial in Pilate's court, after the crucifixion, here we are at the tomb on Easter morning, and look who comes and brings spices and ointments to anoint the body of Jesus. And who do you think were the first persons to discover that the tomb was empty? Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Joanna. Joanna did what she had to do. She had a sense of priorities and a sense of purpose. We find this out in the strangest ways. This life, you know, is not a rehearsal. This is the real thing. And what a blessing it is to find a purpose for living and make it count. And this is what Jesus does for us. I remember how my father would not shave in the morning when he went to work. He drove a truck in the Navy Yard. He never missed a day in some 40-odd years, and President Truman gave him a great big plaque for driving his truck and not driving it overboard down there in Portsmouth. We were so proud of Daddy. He was like clockwork. He would come home at the same moment every day. The dog knew when Daddy was about to turn the corner. Somebody would say, "Hey, did you get your work done?" "Why?" "Daddy's on the way." "How do you know?" "Look at Rex." Rex was standing there with his ears stuck up, his tail straight up in the air, watching that corner to see when my daddy would pop around the corner. Daddy would go to work in the morning with that salt and pepper beard on his face. "Daddy, why don't you shave?" "Well, I'll shave when I get back home this evening." Why didn't he shave? It was because the job in the Navy Yard was not his purpose in life. The job in the Navy Yard was simply a means of feeding his family, paying his dues, and getting by. Daddy's life began at 5 o'clock when he was the real Herbert Proctor, practicing his violin for the Sunday school orchestra, studying his Sunday school lesson for the teachers' meeting on Friday night, rehearsing his Masonic lectures for the initiations coming up. That was Daddy's real life. All day long, they called him Boy, George, come here, whatever. But he wore that beard as if to disguise the fact that I'm not the person you think I am. I'm somebody else entirely. And watch me when I get home at 5 o'clock. He'd come in the house and give my mama a big hug and then head straight upstairs and heat that water in that old gas hot water heater. And then you'd hear him up there running the water. He'd be shaving. He'd come downstairs, the real Herbert Proctor, to live out his real life. So even though we are thwarted sometimes and we have to defer what our real purposes are, if they are real and they belong to us, we will claim them and they will guide us until the very end. Joanna left the palace and stayed with it for a lifetime. Now finally, this is a power question, isn't it? Oh, many of us could do what Joanna did, and during Lent we may think about what we've got to change, but it's a power question. Where does the strength come from? Well, just as Jesus gives us our priorities, and just as Jesus leads us to our purpose, Jesus leads us into relationship with God, the inexhaustible power of the living God. That's available. That's available to us. I remember when I was in college, my first 2 years, I was a music major. I had no talent for music. I was just in school. I won a scholarship playing Schubert's Serenade on the clarinet in a contest, and I got the scholarship. But I didn't want to be a music major, but I did want to be in college very much so. Great Depression was going on. No money was anywhere. And today I was reminded of it, standing here with the tenor singers, you know. It's embarrassing standing beside these fellas trying to sing, you know. And all they do is open their mouths and the round, sweet notes just flow right out. And there I'm struggling, trying to read the words and the notes, you know. I had no talent for that. And when I heard Billy Taylor play the piano, I knew that God was calling me to do something else in life altogether. Well, after 2 years as a music major, and after being called to preach, I went to a Baptist college. And you know what the dean did? He resented the fact that I had gone to a state college first. What did you go to that school for? Because I had a music scholarship. Why didn't you come here first? Because they gave me the scholarship and you didn't. You know what he did to me? In the name of Jesus, that man took from me 3 semesters of credits. I'll never forget him as long as I live. And I have to pray over it because it stirs up anger in me. As hard as I worked, scuffling to get those 2 years in college, he turned around and took 3 semesters from me. When I went to chapel, you know, they sit according to your, grade level. There I was, a junior, sitting up there with the entering freshmen, and all the boys from Norfolk were laughing at me. Look at him, he must be dumb. As long as he's been in college, he's still a freshman. It hurt me so. I went up to my room, and I just had a little talk with the Lord. And I said, I'm going to show that man that I can graduate from this place in 2 years, even though I've got 3.5 years of work to do. And I stand here in this chapel to say to you, my dear friends, I did 3.5 years of work in 2 years, graduated with academic honors for high scholarship. My daddy didn't have a dime to give me. I worked every step of the way for every bit of my bill. How I did it, I don't know. I lost 40 pounds. I lived on 3 or 4 hours sleep at night. But I wanted to be a minister. I wanted to get into the seminary. And I did not want anybody to take joy in creating an impediment for me. And the power came from somewhere. The power came. How I could drag myself out of the bed day after day, put the food in the dining room, rake the leaves on the campus, drive the car for the president. I was just a machine, but the power came. I knew that I was not working for naught. I had a purpose and a priority. And when these things are aligned, we are more than flesh and blood. We are more than amino acids. We are spiritual beings, and God provides what we need. Oh, they that wait upon the Lord do indeed renew their strength. They rise up with wings as eagles. They run without getting weary, and they walk without fainting. May God bless you all.